welcome to the Body Smart Book Club, where we talk about the best of what we read. Today we're going over Chapter 6 in Mark Sisson's book, Primal Endurance, and this chapter is all about sprinting. So this will be lots of fun to talk about. We're excited to dive in today. So I guess we're going to start just talking about my experience with sprinting. I was a sprinter in high school. Funny thing, I'm a distance runner now. I hated it in high school. Hated it. I tried cross country all 4 years in high school, dropped out every single time. I was like, I'm going to do it this time. And I do it for like a week. Then I was like, no, this is horrible. So anyways, so I did sprinting. And this is what the workouts consisted of. Every day it was like, okay, 400 meter repeats. We're going to run 400 meters. Then we have like a 1 minute break, then 400 meters again, a 1 minute break, 400 meters again, 1 minute break. And in high school, if you threw up after workout, it was awesome. Like, you were a runner. I remember talking to my friends like,
you mean you didn't throw up? Man, that guy's so tough. He threw up after his workout.
I was like, I was sad that I never threw up. I actually tried to make myself throw up because I remember having conversations with my friends and we were like, you're not a runner until you throw up. Like, that was so cool. And literally my entire team would, if someone ran over to the side and threw up, everyone would start clapping. Like, it was awesome if we threw up.
Non-ironically, yeah.
Right. And I remember one practice, I actually started to feel nauseous and I was like, yes. And I went over to the trash can and I'm like waiting to throw up. And everyone was like, are you going to throw up? And I was like, yeah.
Heck yeah.
I never did throw up. I was sad. But that's what sprinting was like. It was all about just pushing yourself super hard. And I actually remember getting like, I had a pit in my stomach every day before track because I was like, crap, I'm going to have to go up there and I'm going to have to push myself super hard and I'm going to have to throw up. And I hope I throw up. But it was, I don't know.
You're like nervous. I'm like, I'm not going to throw up, and I'm so nervous about that.
Yeah, I had anxiety. But it's just, I just felt like I had to kill myself every single time. And I mean, anyways, that was my experience with track and sprinting. So, lots of fun.
Yeah, so I have a little bit of different background where she comes from sprinting in high school. I was a distance runner for, all through high school and college. But I too, like before I started running, always had that thought like, man, I'm never going to be a distance runner. That sounds terrible. But lo and behold, now I've been doing it for, 10 plus years and it's my life. So you never know when it's going to come back and change your life. But my experience with sprinting when I was in track was a little bit different. So obviously the majority of my training was focused around aerobic work. And so, we'd have our distance runs every day. But we would do our sprints either in the form of speed workouts, interval workouts. And I wouldn't necessarily classify those as, all out sprints. They're more, like 400 meter repeats, mile repeats, just more like picking up the pace, going towards race pace you'd have for a distance race. Probably the closest thing we had to true sprint training was when we do strides after workouts and after runs every day. So essentially our train of thought behind that was that we would do our distance runs. Obviously, those are at a very easy, relaxed pace. You're working on your aerobic system and your efficiency with burning fat. And after the run, to mix things up and be able to work a different energy system, we do our sprints. When you're doing your aerobic slow work, running is very monotonous. Your legs are almost like a metronome. They're just doing the same movement over and over and over. And that's why lots of times you'll start to see that runners will lose their range of motion because it really is just that same thing, same motion, hour after hour, step after step. And so we saw doing strides or these sprints after the run is a way to open up that movement, open up your range of motion and be able to restore some of the range of motion you lost in the run, as well as increasing your explosive power and increasing your ceiling as an athlete. We talked about this a little bit with the strength training that when you're increasing your max power, you're increasing your ceiling and your ability to get faster as a distance runner. And in a way, sprinting is a lot like lifting. It's working the same system. It's an all-out effort. And it's very tiring, but is very quick as well. And so we would use that as like a supplement to our distance running. And we would do, after every distance run, between 400 and 600-meter sprints at 90 to 100% effort. And that would allow us to increase our cadence and just become more powerful runners in general. It kind of flips into a different role when we're doing our speed workouts, like interval workouts, tempo runs, things like that. We'd use them more as like a warm up. So we do like our typical jog warm up. Yeah. And then we would also do our strides at, 90 to 100% effort prior to, and then go straight into our interval workout.
Yeah. So it's funny as you guys are both talking about your experiences with running. I think we all kind of had a similar idea on the outset, right? That like, oh my gosh, why would I ever want to do any form distance running, right? That sounds exhausting. That sounds tiring. I remember in high school, I was just like absolutely opposed to cardio in any way, shape, or form, right? I'm like, no, like I'm all about the power, I'm all about the speed. I'm like, I'll lift and I'll sprint if I'm chasing a frisbee or football or something like that, but I'm not going to run for the sake of running, which was a huge mistake in my training, right? Because even if we're not training for a specific race, right? A marathon, a half marathon, right? A century ride for cyclists, any of those things. Being able to train all those energy systems and to develop our aerobic capacity along with our own anaerobic capacity is just really important for overall health. And I think one thing that we always talk about is using exercise, building our fitness to be able to do pretty much any activity at any time. So while running might be our primary form of exercise, right? For you, it's a career. At the same time, right? Like if I want to go hike Ben Lomond or I want to go, kayak down a river, I've built those systems to a place where I'm not just going to be totally spent. I'm not going to be totally worn out for the rest of the day or for the rest of the week. And so I think that's a really important point you bring out is that we need to train each of these each of these energy systems in our body so that we're really getting the max fitness benefit. And so I love that you brought up strength training again, right? Again, kind of often falls by the wayside, especially for runners and other endurance athletes, but really important for building overall fitness, right? Strength and power, resistance to repeated impact, right? Because we're strengthening bones and joints and tendons. But the same thing with sprinting, right? We have that high impact, right? It's quick, it's high impact. And so we get some of that same stimulus in the bones, right? Decreasing our risk for things like osteoporosis, but then training that power side of the thing, really building that engine, right? So some of the benefits that we see really quickly with that high intensity, more anaerobic exercise, right? On the higher end is increased mitochondrial density, as well as increased capillary bed growth throughout our body. And so that means that we can extract more of the oxygen out of the air that we breathe, and then we can get it to our muscles faster so that it can continue working, continue moving. And then ultimately that aerobic system works that much better, right? We're burning through fat a lot better. We're burning through fat a lot more efficiently. And so some really, really important benefits that come from more of those high intensity, high power workouts.
So let's talk about how do we sprint? How often should we sprint? How hard should we push ourselves? How long should we be sprinting? How should we be recovering in between sprints? These are the questions that all runners have, especially endurance runners. I feel like endurance runners don't sprint as much as they should. I feel like it's something that's maybe tossed out the window. I remember I didn't realize the importance of sprinting for a long time. I sprinted in high school, and then after I graduated, I felt weird going to the track and just sprinting because I didn't have a meet to train for. So I just kind of started distance running, and I just, did long distance every day. And I remember going from feeling really like sharp and bouncy and quick to feeling kind of heavy and lethargic, and I didn't understand why. That's when I learned that it's important to incorporate sprints so you can get that bouncy and that.
Definitely. And I think that comes from, so this may be an area that we differ a little bit from the book, and I think we can each kind of put in what our opinion was, right? What our point of view in that was. We love the idea, right, of adding sprints into the training. But the way that Mark maps out in the book is, we're not doing any of that anaerobic training for the first 8 weeks, right? None of that high intensity. It's all in that base zone. And then during this period, it's like 4 or 5 repetitions of like 20 seconds of sprinting, and you're doing that maybe a couple times a week. Which, again, when we're talking about stimulating the aerobic system to improve, right? As far as the mitochondria, capillary, VO2 max, things like that. Yeah, that's good. But one of the things that we felt like it lacked, and we can talk more of that, is incorporating it into training, right? And letting it have that specificity of training, doing that high intensity in many of the same movements that we're going to encounter and incorporate into our training. And so that includes things like doing the sprints during hill repeats or just during our regular interval workouts, because we need to train our body specific to the demands that we're going to be facing on the racetrack, on the field, wherever we are.
Yeah. There's different perspectives of ways you should be training based on what you're doing. Obviously, with Melody's situation, she was a sprinter in high school. She has a very different approach than what like an ultra marathoner would have towards sprinting. And so I think dependent on our goals is kind of how we have to approach what we're going to do for our sprints.
Yeah.
If your goal is to become a great marathoner, a great ultra marathoner, you shouldn't be doing workouts that are, 3 by 100 meters, and then call it good, because you still need to work that aerobic system as well, making sure that you're incorporating, the benefits that has, and then adding the sprinting on top of that to increase, that, I don't know what the word was that you used, but like that pop in your stride, the ability the springiness, that's what you called it.
Yeah.
And so you can feel fresh on race day.
Yeah. And so really, we have to develop the power, right? Those fast twitch muscle fibers, which fatigue more easily. And so with that, right, when we train them, obviously it never gets to the point of our other slow twitch fibers, right, that have a much wider base for endurance. But we can train our bodies to use those more efficiently. And that when those do get fatigued, then we cycle over to new fibers. And so our body really learns how to most efficiently activate the muscle to act according to the demands that we're placing on it. And so, training for that power is super important, that explosive moves, that springiness in our steps. So
for sure.
Yeah.
So I want to know what you guys think. Do you think, so someone training for a 5K versus someone training for a 100-mile race, do you think someone who's training for a 5K is going to be doing a lot more sprints than someone who's training for a 100-mile race? Or do you think not really? What are your thoughts on that?
I would say for sure it'd be very different. If you're looking at like the ratio of how much of your energy is coming from your aerobic system versus your anaerobic system for each of those races, they're very different. For a 5K, I can't remember the exact figures, but I think it was close to 75-25, 75 being aerobic and 25 anaerobic throughout max effort 5K. And I've never seen an exact number for the ultra marathon, but I would assume for a 100-mile race, your goal is to like 99.9% aerobic and then a 0.01% anaerobic, obviously because it's such a long time being out there. And when you're sprinting, you're treating your ATP system, which is adenosine triphosphate, and that can theoretically only be used for 10 seconds until you're depleted and only comes back once you are at complete rest. And so the amount of time that you find that kind of movement going on within an ultra marathon is next to nothing. Whereas like in a 5K, although it is still a distance race, can be pretty quick. I mean, if you're looking at top guys in the world, they're running 60 seconds per quarter for 3.1 miles, which is incredibly fast. And so there's definitely a much bigger effect on sprinting than there would be for a 100-miler.
That makes sense, but it still is important to get your sprints in.
Yes.
Whether you're training for a 5K or a 100-mile race, because how do you put it? When you're sprinting, it lowers your ceiling.
Gotcha. So I always word it as like when you're sprinting, it's actually increasing your ability to improve. And so let's say like if this is your top end speed right here, and then this is your marathon pace. The closer you get to that top end speed, it gets harder and harder to improve exponentially, because obviously you're never going to be able to run a marathon at the same pace you can sprint 100 meters. If you could, that would be incredible.
Insane.
So fun
Tell me
to
your
run a
secret if you
marathon
can.
if you're running Usain Bolt running 9.5
gosh.
seconds per 100 meters for 26.2 miles.
Insane.
That would be an incredible feat. And so essentially, if you're increasing your max speed, you're creating more room for your marathon pace to grow before it starts getting to a point where you're not really seeing a lot of gains because you're getting exponentially closer and closer to that max speed.
Awesome. So sprint, y'all. Whether you're training for 5K or a race, make sure you're sprinting.
Yep.
Another thing that we talked about, another thing that Mark Sisson mentioned is when you're a sprinter, it gives you get a good bod, right? Because you never see a heavy sprinter, but you see lots of heavy distance runners. And you said something really interesting that I never thought about.
And so this is one of my kind of complaints with that line of thinking, is one, that it's putting us towards the wrong goal, right? Because in any of this training, that ought not to be the primary goal, right? Of like, oh, I got to have this perfect bod, because essentially there is no perfect bod, right? There's cultural ideals, but in terms of healthy, that is going to be a little bit different for everyone, right? Based on genetics, height, things like that. And so saying that like, oh, if you sprint like this, and then you don't have this perfect body, right? I think that sets people up for disappointment and for missing the point of all of this training. And so another reason I struggle with that concept is because, are we saying it's because of sprinting that people have that body type? Or is it because that people that tend to have body types like that end up being in the elite sprinters, right? Kind of this weeding out process, right? As you get to more and more elite levels, the people that have the movement efficiency, that have the body type, that have the VO2 capacity, right? All those things mix in together to play into like, okay, you're an elite athlete. So that level, I don't know that it's really saying, oh, because they're sprinters, they have this body type. I think we could equally ask, because they have this body type, are they more effective sprinters? And so again, let's put the focus away from looking a certain way, having a certain body type, et cetera, to how can I build the healthiest me, right? What can I do to increase my fitness now and in the future, so that not only can I enjoy life, but I'm also preventing certain diseases and the secondary and tertiary complications of those diseases, right? If I'm healthy now, right, how does that affect my cardiac risk factors? How does that affect my risk factors for diabetes and other metabolic syndromes? Right, that's really the idea that we want to go after, and really what we're all about promoting is that overall wellness and well-being, where we're not going after a specific, like, I need to lose this much weight, or I need to hit this performance metric, right? That hopefully is, kind of a secondary part of training, right? A side effect of our training. But I think really the overall goal is, who are we becoming? What's the lifestyle that we're living? How are we promoting our wellness so that we can be present in our lives and with our families and with all the people that we love?
Yeah. Putting that body, your looks, that concept onto sprinting really creates this false narrative that you have to, it's like a checklist item almost, like to be a good sprinter, to be a sprinter in general, you have to have this kind of a body. But like you said, with the elite athletes, the reason why we get that perception of this is because they're the ones that are glorified in the media. They're those that we see. Whereas truth is, most sprinters don't look like that. They look like normal people that aren't super ripped, that aren't, on TV racing in front of a bunch of people. And so don't let something like that stop you from becoming a sprinter or incorporating sprinting into your endurance training. We've all heard the situation, where someone goes into a gym for the first time and they get there and they feel like everyone's staring at them and they feel like they're being judged because they're out of shape. And whether that's true or not, it creates this barrier between them becoming who they want to become. As opposed to helping each other and being able to push each other to becoming better.
I love that. And like you said, it should just be all about, how can I be my healthiest self, and maybe put the focus on what do I need to do to reach my goals, whether it's run a 5K or in a certain time, and focus on that. And then if, you get toned, if you lose weight, that's just a nice little that's just a nice bonus on top, but it should never be the number one focus.
Yeah, definitely. Oh, I think we've said all we have to say, right?
The end.
The end. That is the end of the road on
I feel like we
sprinting.
had to throw that spill into every single episode.
That
Because
body
I
image.
feel like it is
Yeah.
all throughout this book. It's,
Definitely.
if you do this, you'll have a good body. If you eat this way, you'll have a good body. And I just feel like it's really heavy in this book.
Definitely. Which I think is hard, right? When you have someone like, let's, hold on, I know this is
I was about to bring this up too.
I know, I want to find, so, and not that people that have good fitness, like, can't talk about how to maintain good fitness, right? Like, I think that would be a disservice from what we can learn from that. You can cut some of this out if you want, I'm just going to be flipping through books. I just want to show a picture of Mark Sisson as he is was in his prime and as he is now.
Yeah.
And where's that? Blah, blah, blah.
And that's a topic we've brought up in the past too about, what his goals may be versus ours. And we've kind of hinted at, we think his goals may be more towards body composition and the way he looks as opposed to, performance basis, which isn't always the same thing. And it looks like he just found
So hopefully we can see this. This is Mark and his wife from sometime in the spandex era.
Look pretty dang good.
They do, right? But coming from someone, right, who just kind of genetically predisposed to looking this way, right, to burning fat more easily and to putting muscle on more easily, and so kind of when that's been your lifestyle, and he trained his whole life as an athlete, right, and he had all the resources, right, the nutrition, the trainers, and probably most significantly the time to train in that manner, and to really dive into building that specific physique, and so I think that's been one of our big critiques of the book is this focus on, if you do this thing, then you'll just shed the pounds and you'll look awesome, and everyone will be like, oh my gosh, look, it's Hercules, or Artemis, right? No, Athena would be the super ripped one.
I mean,
Goddess
I
of
never
War.
want to look like Hercules. I'm never looking.
Fair enough. Can you imagine? Whoa.
I mean,
No,
I'd
calm
punch
down.
someone if they said I looked like Hercules.
But right, that I think what's really important for us is, like Preston said, moving the focus away from what does my body look like and moving towards that performance side of thing, right? How can I better myself through applying tried and true training principles that are based in sound science and sound practice and have been played out on the field over and over again.
Well, so I just thought of this. So we just saw this picture of him in his prime back in the day, right? And then here's a picture of him now. I don't know how well you can see that. We'll do zoom up. Anyways, he still looks really buff. He's in shape, but his body has definitely changed, right? Yeah. He doesn't look like how he looks here. And that goes to show that even if you are taking good care of yourself, you're exercising, you're eating right, your body is going to change, and you just need to learn to love it and accept it how it is, right? Yeah. So there's our body spill.
Yeah. I want to get back a little bit to some of the techniques and things behind sprinting to formulate a good sprint workout, and that may look different from your background where you're doing true sprint workouts, whereas for me, it was more of a supplement to the aerobic training. And so maybe I'll just give kind of my experience and what I saw that be and kind of the science behind that, and then maybe you can counteract kind of with what you saw as well.
Sure.
Like I mentioned at the beginning, usually it was used as something like after a distance run to help increase that top end speed. And one of the big focuses that we had is that there would never be any restricted amount of rest on there. We would never say, do one sprint and then take a minute rest and then do the next one. When we're doing this, when we're putting a time in between, it almost becomes like we're working aerobic energy systems because time is a restraint. Whereas like with your anaerobic training, I'm stumbling on my words a little bit here, but ATP can only be used for up to 10 seconds. And so if you're skipping over that, then you aren't truly training your 100% in the anaerobic system. You're partially doing the aerobic system as well, because you're not completely rested by the time you do the next one.
Which there's time and place for that kind of training, right?
Yeah, I would classify that more as like a typical interval workout that people would do when they're doing 8 by 400 meters or something like that, where it's close to like a mile pace or a 5K pace as opposed to an all-out sprint.
Right. And I feel like another one of the benefits of that kind of workout is your fatigue resistance and also mental toughness.
Exactly.
Right. My experience, I'm still trying to figure out how to fit sprinting in with distance training. So I love to hear your perspective on that.
Yeah.
My experience with sprint training, it was basically interval work every single day, right? It was the 400 meter repeats, 800 meter repeats, the ladder drills, around 400, then a 300, then a 200, and a 100. And it was always, one thing that I realized wasn't good that our track coaches did, and if you're watching this, track coaches, I love you and appreciate you, and all that you taught me. What they did is it was a set workout for the entire team. The workout wasn't individualized for each person, and I can see, for a whole track team how that would be hard. But what it would be is, so you run 100 meters, and then we have a certain amount of time to rest, and then we have to run again. I guess that's kind of what you were just saying, like constrained or restricted by that time constraint.
Yeah, so you guys had set amount of rests between your intervals.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. One thing that I really like that he mentioned in the book is that after you do a sprint, you should wait until your breathing is normal again, and then sprint once your breathing is normalized.
Yeah, and that's kind of what I was trying to get at.
Yeah.
I think I lost my words a little bit there.
No, I think I got what you're saying.
The fact that rest doesn't matter with this. Really, we're just looking at, quick bursts of energy to be able to push that top end, as opposed to having this be like a aerobic workout where you're doing several intervals back to back to back.
Yeah.
Right. So I guess you want to figure out that right mixture. There's time and place for that kind of workout where you do only have 30 seconds between each interval. And then there's a time and place for when you really just want to work that anaerobic system, where you do the full out sprint, but then you wait until your breathing is normalized, doesn't matter how long that takes, and then you sprint again once things are normal. So you're staying in that anaerobic place instead of holding yourself in that aerobic place.
Yeah. And so that kind of in the book, what he talked about, right, is that the workouts that are very much like that. So overall, the amount of time that you're sprinting isn't huge, even though the workout itself might extend over 20 or 30 minutes, just so you're able to come back to that baseline and then really just push that power and get to that top end speed again. One of the things he talked about was that in those sprints, the performance should be fairly similar between each sprint, right? So that if the first one, you covered this distance in 20 seconds or you felt like you last about 20 seconds, then each subsequent one should be somewhere around there. And that's a good way to kind of measure, okay, am I waiting long enough between these sets? And then again, am I really incorporating and using those energy systems that I'm looking to, or am I just getting too much am I creating too little time between each of those intervals?
So. I like that. So to clarify, he was saying, okay, 100 meters in 20 seconds. So you should be able to run 100 meters in 20 seconds over and over and over again. And as soon as you feel like you have to put in more effort to run 100 meters in 20 seconds, then you need to stop. Or as soon as you're putting the same effort, but it's taking a lot longer to get 100 meters, then that's when you want to stop. So when is it appropriate to do interval work, like what we were talking about, with not a lot of rest in between intervals, versus when is it more appropriate to do these kind of sprints where you wait till you're totally recovered to sprint again?
Definitely, there's a fine balance there, because obviously when it comes down to the ratio of how much you're using each system within your actual races, there's going to be a lot higher in the category of those interval workouts that are going to be more at race pace as opposed to that all-out effort. But at the same time with these, rest is very important, and so it's not going to be every single day at race pace and then do some sprints and all these things that are max efforts. We want to make sure that you still get your aerobic work that's going to be at an easy leisurely pace, both for recovery and for the adaptations that has on your body. And so my typical work or training week will look something like a Monday we'll do, just an easy aerobic run. Tuesday, Track Tuesday. You got to do something fast on Track Tuesday.
I like it.
And so we'll do
Taco Tuesday.
we'll do some
Yeah, it's probably better.
we'll do some intervals on Tuesday, probably something along the lines of, 12 by 400 meters at 5K pace. And then because it is Taco Tuesday, we probably get tacos afterwards. And then we move to Wednesday.
Tacos.
And, we'll try to recover from that workout the day before. So everything will be pretty easy that day, kind of back to a run that we had on Monday. Just that more aerobic work, recovery, and fat adaptations there. Moving into Thursday, probably typically do another speed workout. That is going to be a little bit different than Tuesdays. Tuesdays was, pretty quick, it's 400 meters. And then Thursday we might do something that's going to be more long and a sustained effort. And so your tempo runs, your fartleks, things like that, they're going to keep you in that.
I know. I laugh every time I hear fartlek too.
I
was trying to learn
For those of you that don't know what fartlek means, it's a word that means speed play. So I've usually seen it done in the format of 5 minutes hard, 4 minutes easy, 3 minutes hard, 3 minutes easy, so on and so forth.
Also, if you're wondering, I'm 3 years old, so.
Yeah. And, then another recovery day, Friday, and then a good long run on Saturday. And so where sprinting kind of fits in on that from a distance runner perspective is I would typically do, 3 to 400 meter sprints or 10 to 15 seconds, whichever comes first, again, something just really short and explosive on those Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, those easy days, just to kind of get the legs moving again. Because in a way, it does jumpstart your recovery a little bit. When people are talking about recovering from something, it's very common that you will hear from coaches, physical therapists, really experts in the field that the best way to recover is not just to sit on the couch and do nothing all day. And so make sure you get those legs moving, and then opening up that range of motion by doing those sprints is going to help not only with your explosive power and those other adaptations that we talked about with sprinting, but it's also going to help with your recovery, get you ready for that workout the next day.
Awesome. I hope that whoever's listening to this, if you zoned out, I hope you tune back in for that, because that was valuable information.
Go, yeah.
That was awesome.
It's tried and true, of all the way through high school, college. It's funny when I talk to different athletes from all around the country, how similar everyone's weeks are structured. Literally, everyone refers to Tuesday as Track Tuesday. Whether you're from New York or whether you're from California, I would say probably 90% of people would be doing speed workouts on Tuesdays. And I don't know if it's just because of that assimilation or if
there's some kind of energy in the world.
Something magical about Tuesdays. But yeah, usually Tuesday and Thursday, and then a long run on Friday or on Saturday or Sunday is pretty typical. And again, with those sprints as well, they can still be done on those Tuesday and Thursdays, but typically they'd be done as more of a warm-up, getting ready for that interval workout or that tempo run, kind of get the heart rate up and the legs ready to work out for those long, intense workouts.
I love that.
Yeah. No, I think that's all great stuff. I think that's probably a great place to end, right? With that kind of final explanation of the training breakdown. I think that's really beneficial. Mm-hmm. And so, like Melody said, if you zone out for the rest, definitely tune back into that one and give that a listen. There's a lot of great information in there. Preston's obviously had a lot of great experience and learned some really powerful lessons in training over the years. And so, yeah, great stuff.
For sure. So if you have any questions about what we talked about today, or if you have any questions about what you read in Chapter 6 in Primal Endurance, go ahead and comment below, and we'd love to answer those questions for you. A quick shout out to a few of our sponsors. Shout out to Facebook page Run for Fun. Shout out to Jimmy Thomas Race Series out in Tooele. Shout out to the Utah Running Shop. Shout out to the Wasatch Run Club.
Yeah, join the Wasatch Run Club. It's my group if you didn't know. So.
And then also shout out to the St. Joseph High School cross country and track team. Thank you guys. And tune in next time. We'll be going over I don't know what chapter we'll be going over. One of them.
Yep. And final shout out to America for blowing up a lot of great things on Saturday.
4th of July.
Happy 4th of July.
We're almost there.
Woo! All right.
Okay, bye guys.
Catch you on the flip side. Oh, I said
Woo!
bam. Yeah.
I leaned out the camera too fast. Sprinting, do it.
Just do it.